So here we have Putt Lab data. This is taken from one of my students. We have protected the data, by the way. You can see that we've covered up their names. But essentially, we get 10 pages where we get an option to go through every facet of the stroke. Still a work in progress. This is after several sessions. And essentially, what we get to see here is that the timing numbers are not great. Now, the timing is based on PuttLab and its own criteria. Likewise, the other tendencies are as well. And you can see that those tendencies, we're happy to take those. Consistency is a huge score that we're looking for here. So, face aim. So, just remove this now because there's some data there that we can use. But essentially now we can see that at the setup, we're averaging out on these 7 putts with a 0.2 degrees open. So very, very slightly open club face. I like to see that in a player. It suggests that the natural movement pattern is going to be open to closed as against hole in the club face open. And you can see below a number that suggests that the putting stroke does close somewhat. But good consistency scores, and as you can see from aim as well. At impact, the club face is slightly closed. At the same time, the path is very slightly left. Not an unusual pattern amongst a good golfer. So path impact, so you can see here the pattern of movement. This is the projection of the sweet spot as it moves back and forward, and this would show up very similar to being on one of the mats that we have on the T-stroke putting arc. So you can practice, optimize your arc, and get to see this reflection back on the screen. We can see that the club needs adjusting. So part of the data that we collected from here was the fact that the club face, this particular club was a new club, we're testing it out, but the lie angle wasn't set up correctly. So we need to make that adjustment, and you can see slight contacts towards the toe of the club as well. So again, we need to make a little adjustment on the position of the golf ball, or maybe by just adjusting that lie angle and getting it flatter, we can optimize the sweet spot. The beauty about PuttLab is it tells us exactly where this is taking place. And you know, we can both, client and coach, can actually work on those key characteristics to improve. The fascinating page for me, this is the critical page really, is what's happening at the point of impact. And we can see that there's a large element of consistency here with one putt that's a little rogue. The first putt just got off a little bit more compression, a little bit more handling on the shaft lean, and rise angles a little less. All consistent, but just that little bit further forward. Predictive launch. PuttLab doesn't measure the golf ball, it predicts the golf ball's launch based on ballistic science research, and we're looking here at a fairly neutral spin. So in other words, the golf ball's going to skid as it starts its first phase of the putt. That's good. Skid creates friction, friction creates roll, and that's what we're ultimately looking for. So with minimal loft and minimal rise angle, the ball won't lift off the ground, and that means its first phase is going to be consistently forward, assuming the club face is fairly accurately straight, and that's, of course, we saw that in the second page. At that point as well, of course, back on the launch phase, we can see whether or not the loft is ideal at the point of impact. This is where we get to fine-tune the loft. Club face rotation based on the length of the stroke. If we go back here, we would be looking at around about 10 inches if it finished here, so it's about 10 to 12 inches or so in backswing on this, so that we would now be able to see from here that the 5.5 degrees open would be approximately the right amount of rotation. As you can see here, PuttLab's comfortable with that rotation. Nice flat line, nice smooth approach into the back of the ball. You can see that the player's response to the club face being slightly closed is a slight slowing down of that closure through the ball, and a little less closed at the point of impact. Oh, sorry, just after impact. So the club face pattern through here, generally square through, within half a degree, so pretty good going. The movement dynamics, we can see anything going up on here is an acceleration. We can see that the player's tendency is to just flatten out just before the ball. No deceleration, but definitely not a strong acceleration at the point of impact, suggesting that his distance control is pretty solid. And we can look then at the dynamic numbers. So this is where PuttLab likes to see its numbers, again, based on the tour player averages. Currently we are looking somewhere between 1.9 and the 2.3 on average. So a little bit quicker in terms of timing. So this player just takes a little bit, it's the ratio just takes that little bit longer to get back to the ball. All in all, that's the bit that we'll be improving. A little bit more brisk. We can probably trim down the length of the backswing, give him a little bit more time to be able to get back to the ball at the right speed, or a little less time if you want to do it that way, because obviously the numbers flip. So essentially here, a little bit too long to take to get back to the ball, and we need to be able to trim that down. But with good distance control, I've got nothing to fix. So this guy is a guy who's guaranteed to improve.